It was 1 year ago when our then music director, our director of religious education, and I gathered in a very empty sanctuary at Temple Beth Tikva and broadcast a short service. We didn't know then that it was the last time that we as a community would hold a worship service of any kind in that sanctuary. And then a new sanctuary in a new location would be awaiting us when the time came, somewhere over a year later, it turns out. My sermon that morning began with the words, "Times of uncertainty show us who we are." Well, I don't need to tell you that this has been a year of uncertainty. And we are nonetheless still in a time of uncertainty, albeit one tempered by the practical hope that comes from a shift in national leadership and many of us being vaccinated at this point. I'm grateful that here at this 1 year mark, I can point to those concrete markers of hope. We are not in the situation we were a year ago, and I believe we have come through the worst. I'm delighted to be able to say that this morning. And this time of uncertainty, has it shown us who we are? Yeah, I think it has. And I'll admit that I was sometimes startled by the reflection of some of who we being humanity, are. I wouldn't have necessarily believed that in a time of an international health crisis, so many would pick such divisive paths to follow. Who knew? Conventional wisdom suggests that sometimes crises pull people together, sometimes it pulls them apart. What we have seen this past year is both happening simultaneously, sometimes coming back to back, sometimes even confusingly coming one on the heels of the other within the same community. I talked last year about the need to put the larger social good above our own individual wants. What I didn't count on is seeing so much delusional thinking spring forth. I was unprepared for the traumatic response to this crisis and what it would trigger in people. And I didn't fully realize how unskilled so many people are out in the world in dealing with their emotions. The attraction to narcissistic leadership, the proliferation of conspiracy theories, the rise of white race and identity-based hate groups, and the refusal to engage healthily with the scientific realities of this past year, all these behaviors show me how far we as a human race have to go to not just heal ourselves, but equip ourselves with the skills to navigate life's challenges. I think this last year didn't change humanity as much as it magnified its gaping wounds. But on the other hand, and thank goodness, there is another hand, what strength we have witnessed this past year. We've also seen people making really good decisions. We've seen people leading in a compassionate way. We've seen communities rallying and holding themselves together even when it's hard, just like this one has. You know, a year ago, I read the then terrifying report from the Imperial College in London, a report that much of the decision-making internationally this past year was based on, and we really lived that report this past year. But the good news is that a vaccine has arrived at the absolute earliest prediction of that report. The scientific community has come through for us. The medical community has come through for us. The essential workers have come through for us. And so many people have worked harder than ever to reach out to their family and friends, even when they were sometimes feeling depressed or unmotivated. Look at our children, still persevering, even blossoming despite all they have dealt with this past year. Our parents holding it together as much as they possibly can on a daily basis. Teachers in front of Zoom screens or socially distancing in the classroom. Warrior elders cut off from their families for safety reasons, but still carrying on. So many people exhibiting this quiet heroism this past year. And look, I know some hard truths about this past year. Not every marriage or relationship has made it through this time. Within our own congregation, we have seen the end of important relationships, or certainly the stresses on them. We've seen job loss, families separated by circumstances. We know that some members of our community have struggled even more than ever with their addictions, depression, anxiety, anger management, or whatever it is that challenges them. We know that some members of our community have lost loved ones directly to COVID. Look, we're a well turned out group overall. We at UUCF don't tend to put all our problems out on the front porch, as my great grandmother used to say, but they're there. We all have things that we struggle with, and this past year created conditions that understandably exacerbated those issues for so many. And yet still I've witnessed so much kindness, so much compassion, so many people determined to keep going, to keep working for justice, especially as they recognize that not everybody was going to be able to do that. This has been a time when some who have had to carry a little more of the weight so others could have the break that they needed. We've seen it in this church community, and we've seen it out in the world. You know, 1 year ago, I told you, I love you. In my heart, I say that every week, but I don't usually say it quite that way. I suppose it sounds too sentimental to me during regular times, but perhaps we should get better at directly saying that to the people in our lives whose love keeps us going. I know the more rational among us may struggle with words like love sometimes. I too can't exactly define it, but I believe it's one of the things that keeps us from just being a collection of TED Talks and brings us to a place of meaningful community. Love. For me, it's more than just thoughts or feelings. It's a way of positioning ourselves with one another. When we love one another, it informs our actions. It gives us greater capacity to be compassionate. When we actually love one another, we inevitably grow and evolve as human beings. We explore more depth in our emotional lives. We become less reactive. We become more inclined to examine and change things for the betterment of others, even when it makes us uncomfortable. For me, this is really the core of this faith called Unitarian Universalism. Learning to love one another better. 1 year later, well, I feel I have more practice at doing that, but I still have a long way to go. I still get frustrated that the world isn't full of people who think just like me. And that, of course, is my ego speaking and not my loving center. But I'm getting there. I'm getting there by reflecting on the hard-won wisdom of this time. It's 1 year later. What have I learned? What have we learned? 1 year later, and we've learned the need to take some time to just sit with our feelings, especially grief, the grief of this past year, the losses we have all had in one way or another. 1 year later, and we've learned the need to take time to acknowledge the good we have witnessed, to even celebrate what has come forth in this time, the new energies that have emerged, the relationships that have been strengthened during this time. 1 year later, and we've learned that even when things are uncertain, we need to start making plans. As I said a year ago, this moment is not forever. And it isn't. Our lives will eventually fall into a different pattern that's starting already. Our congregation will begin meeting in person at some point here in the months ahead. And thanks to the UUCF COVID Safety Task Force appointed by our board, when that time comes, we will all feel we are doing it safely and ethically. It's time to begin getting excited again about the possibilities ahead for each of us individually and collectively. 1 year later, and it is time to move out of simply coping, surviving, and existing and into a place of practical hope, visioning, and even planning. 1 year later, and we have been through a year of hard lessons and harsh realities. 1 year later, and if you have survived this year's great stresses with your reason intact, and I hope everybody listening has, you must have practiced along the way the ability to be grateful. I hope we keep practicing that. 1 year later, and I come to the same conclusion I came to a year ago, though now it is informed by this singular and surprising journey. I said, in times of uncertainty, I will tap into the one certainty I have, that as long as I am alive, I love. And I believe this is true for all of us, and even more true when we know it and understand it. 1 year later, and we keep learning better how to love. And listen, folks, soon it will be 1 year beyond this, another year later. For this congregation, the year ahead involves a new building in a prominent downtown location, a commitment to the anti-racism work of the Eighth Principle, the revitalization of our children's religious education program and family ministry. For each one of you individually, the year ahead stretches, still unknown, but despite the limitations circumstances may place on it, still yours to affect and change as you choose to in how you commit to it. Let us look back on the year that is now ahead, 1 year from now, and be able to say, yes, we lived. Yes, we loved. A year ago, I said, let this time of uncertainty show you who you are. The truth is that life is always a time of uncertainty, sometimes more cloudy than others, but look, even in the best of times, life's pathway is never paved in stone. The path is always there for us to create along the way, though sometimes the obstacles are greater than others. This is truth. But the deepest truth of all, the one I want you to feel in your soul or your mind or center this morning, the one I don't want you to be embarrassed to take in and hold, is that we don't just love. It's not just something we do. The deepest truth is that who we are, right there in our center, the thing that doesn't discriminate based on our personality type or gender or race or age or ability, the thing that we are in our essence that makes us what we are, that thing is love. With that knowledge in mind, may we all live our lives accordingly and robustly. May we know that we are